Hey everyone, it's Jamie from Independent Street Tarot and Seasons from Rituals, and it is August 23rd. We are one day into Virgo season, and I thought I'd just jump on here. So much has been happening since the full moon, super full blue moon, and Aquarius. It's now Virgo season here in the States. We just had a um, banger of a Democratic National Convention. So if you guys want, this is it's probably going to be what I'm calling like planets and politics, and then I'm going to do a little bit about Virgo season too. So you guys just settle in. We're just gonna have a quick chat about how I see things moving forward. If you're not into the politics stuff, maybe I'll timestamp it or timestamp it so when we just start talking about Virgo season, we can get into Virgo season. So let's just start with the politics side of it. And one of the reasons that I use the politics side of it is because something that people can look at. Um, and then I can compare it with what's happening in the skies. So the DNC started on the 19th of August. It was on that full moon in Aquarius. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of astrologers were calling for mayhem and trouble and riots. And I never saw that energy with that moon, even with that convention. Again, the moon was in Aquarius. Aquarius is fixed air. Um, Aquarius is a sign of the individual first and then the community. Um, and at the same time, there were 8 out of the 9 planets involved with this full moon, which was just signaling to me a huge shift, right? A huge shift. And so that full moon was illuminating the shift. The full moon was illuminating what has changed. Aquarius is an air sign, so it is about communication. It is about the way we think. Aquarius is the cosmos, Aquarius is the future, right? And it was really interesting that all those messages was about the future, the future, the future. So whoever is Kamala's entertainment personality astrologer, good job. You hit on all the right things. The other thing I want to talk about is even with my channel, I'm not gonna lie, you guys, I always talk about this divine feminine energy that's here on the planet. And I sometimes feel like, oh, Jamie, they don't want to hear about this again, or sometimes I think, oh, I'm being too much of a Pollyanna, like when I'm looking at the planets and read the energy and I do see good things, and feel good energy. It doesn't mean that not good things will happen, bad things. I don't know what the right word would be. It's just that we're in this new way of being able to deal with them in a healthier way. We do have tools. We do have different ways of seeing things and talking about things, right? And so, that age of Aquarius, right? Bringing new answers to old questions. I definitely see that coming in. Um, and so talking about the planets and how they show up and the energy they give off to me has changed completely, especially since the kissing stars in 2020 when Jupiter and Saturn were conjunct at 0 degrees of Aquarius. Right now, Pluto's at 0 degrees of Aquarius, and it's getting ready to retrograde back into Capricorn. Just put a pin on that. We'll come back to that. But, during that full moon, we had that Saturn and Jupiter square, and it was kind of showing um, to me what we were going to be building on. And it is that divine feminine energy of compassion and empathy. And I know when I would say this in my videos, even in my mind, I was thinking, Jamie, I don't know if this is going over because the world is a shit show. And I mean, I've been thinking that for 4 years, even um, like during the pandemic and all those things were coming out. And I used to do videos on Instagram, right? I used to do videos and post them to Instagram, which I really enjoyed, but then they made it so they had to get shorter. So I decided to migrate over here to YouTube. But one of the things I got the most response on my videos is when I would tell people, I get that the news is telling you one thing, but let me just tell you what I see. And I would say I go out, I go to the park and I see families playing with each other. I see different people of different races and different colors and different backgrounds still just being normal and doing normal people things, and that would calm everyone's energy so much. And it was a reminder, that the world was still moving and that we still do have human decency, and there is still compassion. It wasn't everyone hating their neighbor. No matter, and the rhetoric with the news has gotten so bad that, I'm happy people are just not watching the news and going to different platforms to see things. That's kind of the only way that sometimes those things change, is when their viewing dollars go down, right? So good for you guys, right? Power to the people, you know, individual first. I'm not going to get gaslit. I'm tired of this. I'm going to go somewhere else. That's kind of how this works. But also people would say like, no one wants to work. Everyone's, this way. And I would always tell my dad, I'm like, Dad, me and my friends are still going to work. Like, I don't, a lot of them weren't able to work because they were in the hotel industry here, right? But then they were able to make a living wage off their unemployment check, and that was like a huge kick in the um, gut. Like, oh my God, wait a minute, what am I doing, right? So that started that whole new conversation. So all these new conversations had started. They're going to keep going. That divine feminine energy has been rising since 2018, ever since Uranus went into Taurus. Taurus is ruled by Venus, and Uranus rules Aquarius. And so that was just bringing in all that Aquarian energy to fix sign of Taurus, because things had to change. By 2020, we were in a pandemic, so things were definitely changing. I think 2018, 2019 was the height of that Me Too movement. And so here we are in 2024. And then we had this full moon in Aquarius, right? Uranus Uranus is in 27 degrees of Taurus. It's a degree point we've never experienced in our lifetime, unless you're over 84 years old. Which if you are and you're watching my channel, thank you. So it's bringing in all this new energy. Aquarius, I mean, Uranus to me, turning through Taurus, was getting rid of that old toxic masculinity, patriarchal timeline, for sure, because Venus is how we value ourselves. Venus is how we see ourselves worthy. And for the longest time, we saw ourselves worthy by what they said, that toxic masculinity said, the only reason why we were here was to have babies. We weren't worth the same as them because we got paid less. We would run households, PTA meetings, churches, schools, all those things. And the reward was just getting an atta girl, right? And even like on the other side of that, where women were in business and still not getting paid the same as their male counterparts. So all of that has been changing. All of that has, come to the forefront. And now here we are, a woman again running for president. And let me just say this. People sometimes were giving Hillary, Hillary, I'm glad she came on. Her talking about the glass ceiling is important, because all of us that have lived through it and wanted to, we get it. We're here for it. I get with like younger people and they want to keep moving forward. And maybe these are just some of the people over. I watch The Bulwark, which I love. And I love that I'm able to comment not mean things, but comment my opinion, if you will, over there. But one of them said like Hillary came and gave like this PTSD speech, and I just thought that was so rude, because what she did, she came back and she was empowering, and she was reminding us that the glass ceiling is still being broken, and not to give up. And I thought that was really empowering, because if you're 18, you don't know, you haven't lived in that energy of this toxic masculinity like the rest of us have for so long. So thank you, Hillary. And just to talk a little bit about the DNC and how flawlessly that went off. Like, the fact that they first and foremost did this all during a Mercury retrograde. Hats off to you guys. Secondly, to be planning this, thinking that one person was going to be the candidate and then having to pivot when someone else, great job. And also I made the joke with my mother. I was like, this is what happens when you pay professionals to do what they're good at. And so for a long time, at least for a long time, I think we've had to deal with people who weren't good at their job and they weren't professional. And the rest of us just had to deal with it because either someone owed a favor to someone or they had the right last name or they were, you fill in the blanks, like they were rich. And so then they got the job and then we didn't, and I think that's part of that toxicity that's being left because that Uranus, right? That's the revolution. When people read Uranus, they're always like shock and awe, and which they're not wrong, but the shock and awe to me now in this age of Aquarius is the understanding that you know who you are, you know what you're worth, right? Instead of waiting for the other, which was that age of Pisces to come and tell us, because Pisces is the other to tell us what we're worth and what we're going to do. And so it's changing that conversation from always reacting to the other to showing up, knowing who we are, speaking our truth, speaking confidently, knowing things may change, right? Especially with this Mercury retrograde, and it's going to be retrograde until the 27th, and then it'll station direct and go back through Leo, and then it will go into Virgo in its home sign, right? So get ready to speak out there for sure. One of the ways that I was reading this Mercury retrograde in Leo was remembering who we are, remembering what we want, remembering our own power, right? Because it started in Virgo. Virgo was showing, okay, this is what we need to resolve. And then it came back into Leo, and Leo is our solar plexus. Leo is our power center. And so it was, to me, a remembering more than a getting our wires crossed type energy. Now, I will say there's 5 days left of this retrograde energy. So this would be the time where I would start looking to see if wires are getting crossed. And like earlier before, I didn't see it that way. It was more of a remembering, right? Retrograding back into who I believe I am. So then Mercury will turn direct. So then we will be saying who we are, right? If you go to that, again, to the DNC, they were letting us remember where we've been, who we are, where we're going, right? So that was that Mercury retrograde. And then I would talk about, it was just such a I mean, to put on a convention is hard enough, man. I put on tiny things and it's a fucking shit show. All right. It's like circus. So the fact that they were able to do that and pull that off was very impressive. It really, really was. And then we have Jupiter, who's still in Gemini, and Mars, who is still in Gemini. And Mars, I think, is at 22 degrees of Gemini. And so that could be our tale of two cities, if you will. And they're still in a conjunction. They were exact right on that full moon. Or were they exact on the full moon, or was it the Saturn and Jupiter? They were close anyway to the full moon. And then that Saturn Jupiter square, right? Going back to that, showing what we're building, showing what's in store for us, right? Showing us what isn't stable, right? And showing us what needs to be stable. So, 2020 was that new election cycle we were all waiting to see. And this isn't like a big fucking go Democrats type thing. I know that I'm doing this. Listen again, politics isn't the hill I'm going to die on, but because I know people are people, we're corruptible, we're not perfect. We don't do everything great. I just think it's such stark contrast because of what happened to the Republican Party versus my friends who are Republicans, and where we are now, so let me just say that, I have plenty of friends who are where we get along just fine. Okay. But this is kind of what's happening in popular society or culture right now. So this is to me a good way to lay this out. So Mars is traveling through Gemini. Mars is at 22 degrees of Gemini. Jupiter's at, I believe, 18 degrees of Gemini. And Jupiter will retrograde here in a couple months, I'm pretty sure, because it stays in Gemini for a minute. But so you have Mars, that masculine energy, right? Who I see as a divine masculine energy, really lighting up the differences, right? Between what's going on in our society today, in our world today. But what's interesting, it's also showing where there's actual aggression versus maybe manufactured aggression. So I think that's really important to keep looking at. Gemini again is the twins, it's the reporters, it is communication. So what are we communicating? How's it getting bigger? And how are we going to move that energy through, right? To what is really the message versus what's not really the message. Where the toxic masculinity still might be shown versus the divine feminine, divine masculine energy. And having that compassion, right? When the male speakers were talking about compassion and empathy and just showing up and helping people out, you know, whether because it's the right thing to do. You're like, well, can I give you a ride? Okay, good, let's go. You know, thank you very much. Sure thing. Because it's nothing off your, you know, it's nothing out of your day. Virgo season. But also that's that divine feminine energy that's just been blanketing the planet. And now it's being able to be shown on a massive scale, completely massive scale. You know, seeing you know, President Barack Obama, you know, talk about you know, it was funny because he was saying, you know, he was saying these things and he goes, and I know they sound maybe kind of silly right now because of all the bad things was happening. And I was like, God, I've been thinking like that, you know, for years, because it's okay to be positive and it's okay to understand that things are shifting, right? And sometimes it just takes, well, I mean, it just, you know, the status quo to shift. Uranus in Taurus, right? What was fixed Earth, what was supposed to be solid, what was supposed to be a sure thing, Biden, Trump, nope, no more. Completely shift, right? Completely shift. That's that revolution. That's the shock and awe. And then for them to come up and put on this basically flawless convention, shock and awe, right? It's not always going to be bombs and wars and protests. You know, it is this revolution of love, which I know sounds cheesy as you know what, but it is, because the more we start to remember who we are and value ourselves and show humility with ourselves and forgive ourselves and give ourselves grace, then that's what changes. That's that ripple effect, you know, we keep talking about. Energy is everything, the heart chakra, how it puts out those EMFs, you know, that is what's here, you know. Age of Aquarius. Aquarius is the sign, the like this, you know, it's the water bearer. So people are confused. Is it a water sign? It's an air sign, right? But it's that energy. It's the cosmos coming in. It is you loving yourself and then that radiating out, you know. 8 planets were involved in that full moon. Saturn retrograde in Pisces, right? Conjunct Jupiter in Gemini. Gemini is air sign. Age of Pisces is what we're leaving. Saturn, Aquarius's ancient ruler. Saturn understands boundaries, and that is what we're bringing in now. That is why it's okay to say we have a large tent, because we understand boundaries, right? That is divine feminine energy. Divine masculine energy is having boundaries. when water signs, or any sign, but we'll just use water because that's where getting out of this age of Pisces. When water signs don't have boundaries, they flood. They just keep going and going and going. There's no direction. Saturn now rules Capricorn. So Pluto is about to go back into Capricorn. Capricorn rule is the sign of work, but still boundaries. We haven't had any boundaries in a long time. That's why people conquer people and, wars start, right? They're not respecting each other's boundaries. That age of Pisces, right? Lots and lots of wars. So, and Pisces represents the other. So it is this idea that when Aquarius represents the self first and then the other, it's knowing who you are. So instead of looking to someone else to tell you who you are, you know who you are. And Saturn's in there setting those boundaries, setting that stage. So clearing out, right? That Pisces energy, that low Pisces energy. High Pisces energy is great. Low Pisces energy, confusion, addiction, illusion, narcissism, which is a lot of what's happening in MAGA world, correct? Which, this is just where we are in the planet, right? Having to shift, having to look at ourselves, having to say, wait, this is who I am, this is what I stand for. Making that decision that you're not going to vote, making that decision, what, both these parties are sick and we need a third party. Okay, well, how do we start that, right? And they keep saying you start from the bottom up, middle out, right? And if you want a third party, you need to start from the bottom up, right? This coming in at the beginning or coming in at the top every 4 years isn't working out too good. And again, just using all these as examples. I wish we had 3 parties in America? I sure as hell do. So I hope we do get there. Because the more conversation we have, the better. I'm an Aquarius, so I like to talk, as you guys can tell. So let me think a little bit more on this. If there's anything else that I want to say, kind of like where the planets are, where they're moving. We're in a new cycle. Saturn and Jupiter will be in the next 800 years meeting in fire and air signs. So again, just a word of the wise or word of caution to, if you guys are watching other astrologers and they're still, talking about when Uranus there, bad things will happen. Let's just see where we are now. There was a couple astrologers who had to retract what they were saying. And, and like the thing is, like, we don't know everything, but I would also just gently suggest that maybe start reading the energy differently because we are in a new time. And let me tell you, I know how fucking annoying it is to do something for a very long time. And then someone else comes along that might be younger than you or not and say, well, actually, it's like this. So I get it. And I was just reading one of my astrology books who was written by Stephen Ford. He's still alive. You can catch him on YouTube. And I was like, oh, I don't agree with all this anymore. And I was just like, sorry, Stephen, because it is still what I go and check things out and write things down with, but a lot of it's just not translating like it used to because we're in a different energy. So you guys always remember that we're in a different energy. That divine feminine energy, right? We're in the height of solar flare 25. Like if you guys could go look at the Schumann resonance, it's off the charts. And again, it's not necessarily meaning that you're going to have the best day of your life every single day, but it is this idea that this energy is coming in for us to see that things are changing. They really are. We can get help. We can, the conversation's being changed moving forward forever. I mean, the fact that they brought up, abortion, the president of the United States is talking about like abortion, women's rights, all these things into, it is a different day and even from when Hillary ran, it's insanely different, and so you guys, it's a new dawning. It's a new day, right? It's the age of Aquarius. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have our challenges. That's what we signed up for here on Earth. At the same time, though, things the revolution is here, and the revolution is yourself. The revolution is self-love. The revolution is asking questions to get different answers, right? To realize that when that divine feminine energy comes in, it is more compassionate. It doesn't mean you're a pushover, right? And it doesn't mean like it means that there's boundaries. Like, okay, you've done enough. You tried, it's done. We're going to try something else, right? But also saying, yeah, we tried it, it didn't work well. Whoops, you try something, and having that humility, right? Being more grounded, as we would say, or listening to others. It's just, I want to say 90% of the planet, okay, maybe not 90% of the planet, but most of the planet is more like that versus this one little tiny percentage that has just been we've been beaten over the head with, right? And it's going to make more sense to men and women and however you identify moving forward, because it's just being more in our natural state. Our masculine and feminine sides within us working together is just more in our natural state. And let me say this, I just want to touch briefly on this and then we'll get into Virgo season. Tim Wall's child crying and saying, "That's my dad," overcoming with emotion, to me was the most natural thing. I teared up. I teared up. It was just so beautiful. If I was a parent, that's what I would want my child to say and point at me. And the fact that, I guess they went obviously off on him on the other side is awful, first off. And second of all, everyone's saying like he's neurodivergent. At the same time, I don't know if he is or not. I don't know if that's what people are saying. It doesn't really matter. He's a 16-year-old child, a 17-year-old child, overcome with emotion. Like that can just be it too. It doesn't have to be because he's on any sort of spectrum. It can just be like, I got emotional, it just happens. It just happens. We're emotional people. Like that's what's supposed to happen. And it was honestly the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. I remember, this was supposed to be like 23, 24 years ago. And my dad and I, this was in Alabama, and we were eating lunch at the truck stop, exit 76. It was Baggett's. If you know, you know. If you remember, you were there. Anyway, they had a hot bar, and it was delicious. God bless all those women that used to make those hot bars. I'm afraid they have all passed on because the food isn't good anymore. Sidebar. We're always like, why isn't the food new? I'm like, I think all those women have joined the angels. But anyway, we were sitting there, my dad and I were sitting there and we were eating, and then this family came in, and this little boy, he was probably like 5 or so, went and sat down by his grandpa, and my sister was pregnant at the time with Michael. And I remember my dad just kind of watching him with just like a nice look on his face. And like you could see the grandpa and the son were in this beautiful exchange, and they were just talking. And he looked at me and he said, "That's how Michael and I are going to be. We're going to be pals." And I remember that to this day. And it was like 24 years ago, because it was just a loving moment. And we were able to witness this beautiful moment between this family, and we were just kind of observing. And like, so the fact that his son teared up and was like, "That's my dad," who wouldn't want to be able to say, "That's my fucking dad," right? I mean, that was so beautiful. So, divine feminine energy, divine masculine energy coming in, it's here. It's not going to go away. We'll talk about, how I feel, what's going to happen when Pluto goes back into Capricorn. I think it's going to be fine. I think it's going to highlight all the stuff that needs to go. I don't think we're afraid we're going to move backwards. I think it's just going to restart this conversation on what's going to change, quite honestly. So I guess that's it. Spoiler alert. So, okay. But I'm sure I'll touch on it more when we get there. Okay, friends. So let's talk about Virgo season. And this is what I find very interesting about Virgo season. When the sun went at 0 degrees in Virgo, the moon was in Aries, right? And so Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars, as I see, is a divine masculine. Aries, I see, is a divine masculine. And they became divine masculines, I think, in 2019 or 2020, 2019, when Uranus was zapping them big time, both at the same time. And I was like, oh, this is the reconfiguration of Mars and Aries. They now are going to be divine masculines because we have all this divine feminine energy on the planet. Been talking about this for years. Feel free to go in a rabbit hole on my Instagram if you'd like, or here on YouTube. And so Virgo, the Virgin, the resolver, right? Mutable Earth. Uranus is in Taurus, fixed Earth. The moon in Aries, right? Getting things going. The sun moves, the sun, that divine masculine. So moving into Virgo, our moon, our divine feminine, moved into Aries, Virgo season. Beautiful. So, once Mercury turns direct, it'll keep going through Leo and then come into Virgo where it is at home. Venus is at, I think, 22 degrees of Virgo. So she's almost to these points of mastery in Virgo before she'll move into Libra, who is one of her home signs. So we still have all this really good energy moving forward, all this different way of expressing ourselves. The sun in Virgo is going to show us what needs to be resolved. Virgo the Virgin, and this is where I was reading, in Virgo the Virgin, and it is this energy of like the idea of like being in service, they say like Virgo is being of service, resolving things. It can go in and see what needs to be done. And so in the Virgin is this idea that she is not attached to anything, right? She knows what she has to do in that moment and she gets it done. So like if I think of the Virgin Mary and like as being the Blessed Mother, and so I would, pray to the Virgin Mary, and it would just sit in that energy of is, right? The Virgin is, I would say. That's that energy of the Virgin to get things done. Other people, as a matter of fact, she's right here. She's on one of my other altars. Okay. Other people, place energy or things or words upon the Virgin Mary, which is totally fine. But the idea of that energy is that she's not bound to anything. She just is, so she can be of service. So here we are, Virgo season. How do we resolve what's going on in the world today? How do we resolve what's going on with us? How can we be of service? And it is going into that, sorry, I'm gonna say it again, but going into that heart space, that center of just being the is, right? Not being attached. So like, I would always say, like, if I'm going to volunteer somewhere, I show up and I ask what needs to be done and I get in there and get it done. And so the part that I was kind of clashing a little bit with Stephen's description of Virgos is that they have to then embody the entire journey that they're on. So if they're a mailman, they have to become the best mailman. If they are an artist, they have to become flawless beauty. It was like if they were a counselor, they have to become infinite love. And it kind of goes against the whole idea about the Virgin not being attached. So I kind of disagree with that, but it would be this idea if I was going to go to a beach cleanup, I would be the best beach cleanup volunteer for that day. But it doesn't mean I forget who I am. And maybe that's different because that was written in that age of Pisces, right? And it was Pisces people telling us who we are. And in this age of Aquarius, we're telling ourselves who we are. So I would still show up as Jamie, I would be of service, and then I would leave, right? I would get a t-shirt and I would wear it around. Okay. Beach cleanup. I was there. Okay. Okay. So people could associate me with that. I wouldn't mind that at all. Okay. But at the same time, the difference being in this energy in the stage of Aquarius is knowing who we are and knowing our values and these kinds of things. So here we are in Virgo season. Virgo is the card of the Hermit, which I think is beautiful and perfect because the Hermit knows who they are. When they need a time out, right? They go back to the cave, but they always come out and they always lead with their light, right? And you guys can see it's the Merkaba, which I work with the Merkaba. If you were to, there's plenty of ways to work with it. You guys can look it up. Merkaba. I'm not real sure the correct pronunciation. I always said Merkaba. Um, People work with it with Metatron. But his idea, it is this light, it is our guiding light. It can reset our energy when it needs to be reset. And so the Hermit, knowing who they are, comes out and can be of service by shining their light. So here we are in this Virgo season. Um, it is going to be a big season of resolving things that need to change. Um, and I say within ourselves and our society and our communities. So get ready for that, right? Get ready for that. It's going to be more energized and more fun than we think. I was just talking to my friend Allison today, and we were talking about like, oh my God, I had to clean out my closet. And I was like, isn't it always great when you decide to do a quote unquote chore and it's exciting and fun? And that to me is going to be the energy coming into Virgo season. Our divine feminine, like I said, was at Aries. You know, the moon keeps moving, but when the sun went into Virgo, she was in Aries. So, you know, the warrior, being focused, getting things done, knowing you're going to win. Also knowing, you know, you might not know the strategy to get there, right? But just knowing if you show up and you start working it and get it done, you're gonna get it done, right? So this Virgo season that's kind of a good motto. But allow yourself to feel this new energy. Allow yourself to have these new conversations. Allow yourself to take yourself out of conversations you don't want to fucking have anymore, you guys. That's totally okay. That's one way to resolve something. That's one way to put that boundary. We're not talking about this anymore, especially if it's stuff you've been over and over and over, right? And again, if you guys need help, professionals, they're here, they're everywhere. You can do telehealth, you can go see someone, reach out, right? That's the thing. Virgo rules the digestive system. So let's really start paying attention what we're putting in our tummies, you know, how we feel after we eat certain things, right? The stomach, that solar plexus is a huge psychic center, right? See if you're allowing that to be open. See if you're allowing yourself to listen to your gut. Allow yourself to have a boundary there so you don't have to get everything in the gut, right? Like you can energetically protect yourself because maybe you learn a little bit more about the psychic center in the front of your tummy, at the front of your body, and see how that can help you get through your day, right? Instead of feeling like you're just wide open to everything. So again, mutable earth, Virgo, moving us into fall, right? Leaving summer, moving us into fall. Earth signs, grounded, practical, rich, right? Earth, Pentacles, Taurus is the bull, right? I say Hathor, but associated with money. So how can we resolve our finances better? What are some better decisions we can make with that? The Virgin, you know, steadfast, knowing who they are, unattached, in deep service to themselves and deep service to others, but also knowing, to me, this is my star by it, but knowing who we are, you know, in you know, there are some people who have jobs and that is their whole identity and their whole life. And to me, that's totally beautiful. That's totally fine. You know, the fact that that's where they fit and that's where they feel like they belong and that's where they can show up as their best self. I love that. I fucking love that. And I appreciate that. I really do. So being in service of that way, that's how they are of service. You know, it doesn't mean though, again, one size fits all. Again, Age of Aquarius. How does it work with the individual? So, okay, friends, I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for sitting with me through this little talk. If you guys need a hermit out this season, go do it. If you guys need a break, it's up to you. Go do it. You guys need to sit and remember your light. Keep shining it, right? Keep it generated, right? Keep working with that. Work with that solar plexus. Work with that digestive system. Work with your neighbor if you'd like to, or if you're working with your neighbor too much, cut that off, you know, it's up to you. If you guys have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out. You guys can always drop a comment down below, and then you guys can reach out to me on my website, seasonsandritual.com and independentstreetnola.com. Hopefully, we're going to merge the two soon and get that rocking and rolling, most likely maybe after Mercury turns direct, because that's what we do around here. But till then, friends, thank you for showing up every day. Thank you for being yourself. Thank you for knowing that things are shifting and we're doing it together and we're all doing a really good job. Okay, till next time.